I have another engineer task for you. What I have here is a drawing of a Yugoslavian protective anti-personnel minefield. Now this is what it said in Yugoslavian military doctrine before the breakup, before the civil wars started in Croatia and Bosnia. From the information that I have from the particular article I read, which was from Call 98-6, Call is Center for Army Lessons Learned. 98-6 would be 1998, 6th edition, which would be June. That edition of the Call newsletter or Call magazine booklet, however you want to think of it, dealt with demining operations in the former Yugoslavia. In there, they did give some information on some of the different minefields that had been encountered and some that were, what the Yugoslavian military doctrine said. This is one of those that was Yugoslavian military doctrine that wasn't necessarily followed by the combatants. There are notes in there that the combatants, for the most part, didn't follow doctrine. They just put mines wherever they felt like they needed to put them. They didn't pay any attention to distances between mines, didn't have a standard distance. Didn't matter if the mines were too close where you could end up with sympathetic detonation. A particular mine should be in a particular location because of its effects, like bounding fragmentation versus a pressure-activated blast mine. None of that stuff was really followed by the combatants because the vast majority of them had no military experience, no understanding of military doctrine, let alone mine warfare. But according to pre-war Yugoslavian Army doctrine, this was the general pattern that was supposed to be used for an anti-personnel minefield. Now, according to that doctrine, these minefields were to be in place to protect important locations such as supply dumps, fuel depots, and military bases. This type of minefield would also be in place in front of fortifications to slow mass enemy assaults into your trenches, into your bunker networks, or into the city that you're trying to defend. Now, these minefields did not have set dimensions other than you had set distances for the mines based on their effects, so that you wouldn't have one mine setting off another, which is sympathetic detonation. These minefields were very terrain dependent. For those of you that aren't aware of it, the former Yugoslavia is very mountainous terrain. Lots of mountains, lots of hills, very narrow roadways, basically what you would call jeep trails in the U.S. military. You also had lots of forested areas, lots of woods. So it's really close terrain like you would see in, say, in the United States, let's say up in the Rocky Mountains or in the Appalachian Mountains. Or for another location around the world, like you would see in Korea once you got off the coastal plains. That is the type of terrain that their doctrine for the military was written for. Now, according to Yugoslavian Army doctrine, the first row or first layer of your defense here was tripwire activated mines. These would be located farther out, most likely inside the trees beyond the edge of the area that you're trying to protect. So these would be PMR series mines, the 2s, the 3s, the 4s, or even the old PMR 1s, which are a copy of the Soviet POM-Z mine from World War II. This would also be MRUD, M-R-U-D, directional mines, their version of the Claymore, with a booby trap fuse on it connected to a tripwire to cover a particular area. Another type of mine you would see in this area would be the PROM-1, the bounding fragmentation mine, set to tripwire activation. According to doctrine, these mines were supposed to be spaced at least 5 meters apart so that the detonation of one mine would not cut the tripwire of another mine or set another mine off. These would be set out kind of random inside those forested areas, along those trails and that stuff. You'd locate them on the areas that the enemy would be able to move through the easiest. So you wouldn't put them in the bushes. You maybe hid the mine in the bush, and then you had the tripwire going across the open area next to it, tied off onto a tree. So that as those enemy scouts or that enemy attacking infantry is moving forward, they're setting off tripwires, causing confusion, causing casualties amongst their force. Behind that, you would have your first protective obstacle. This protective obstacle was probably meant to be a wire obstacle, otherwise it could be some type of fence, a wall, something to slow the enemy's advance. Behind that, you will have a decent distance here between the obstacle and the next row of mines. These mines were command detonated MRUDs. They're claymores. And the firing wires for these mines went back to the trench line or a bunker inside that facility, so that that guard in there, he sees the enemy is hitting the wire fence, trying to breach it, trying to get through. He hits the firing device, sets off that mine, takes out that breach team. Or if there's already a breach in that fence line, in that protective wire, sets the mine off to take care of those enemy troops who are rushing through that breach to get at you. Behind that, in front of the final protective fence, you would have a blast minefield. These would be pressure activated mines, toe poppers. So the types that you would see in this would be your PM Alpha 1s, 2s, and 3s. And potentially Yugoslavian copies of the Soviet PMD-6. They did have their own version of it, which looks exactly like the PMD-6, just a slightly different name. But it's the same thing. These are mines that are meant to those enemy troops that are rushing forward through the machine gun fire, step on these mines, blow off a foot and a chunk of their lower leg. The mines here, according to their doctrine, were supposed to be laid 1 meter apart from mine to mine in the same row, and then 2 or more rows, and then these rows would be offset from the row in front of it, and the distance between your Alpha row and your Bravo row here would be between 0.5 meter to 1 meter, terrain dependent. You may space them out a little bit, but you want this overlap here so that if the enemy infantry were charging through, more than likely he's going to step on one of those mines. And that will slow up the enemy, allowing the defenders in here to get fires on them. Or let's say we got the breach up here. They got past the tripwires. They breached a wire. Coming in, Claymore gets set off, takes care of the first few coming through, but now you got an opening, no mine covering it. They're now rushing through, trying to get forward. Your people back here, they're waking up, grabbing their weapons, trying to get into position. You're trying to slow them down. Well, next row of mines, pressure activated toe poppers. They start getting slowed up here before they hit the final fence. And hopefully by the time they reach here, your people are shaking the sleep out of their eyes. Weapons are up on the side of the trench, pointing out of the firing slit of the bunker, and you're putting in fire on the enemy assault. Now, there was a note in there that the pattern for these minefields was kind of random, and it was based on availability of mines, the capability of troops in placing them, and terrain. So you never know. You could have a situation where these blast anti-personnel mines might be up front here, and these tripwire anti-personnel mines were moved back here with the claymores behind them, right behind the second fence. It all depended on terrain, what it looked like, where's the high-speed avenues of approach, what's the vegetation like. Is it high grass? Is it brush? Or is it forest with not too much undergrowth underneath? Or is it forest with a whole bunch of brush and briars and thorny bushes and that stuff filling up the space? You place the appropriate mines in that area or that level of your defense here based on those factors. What will slow down the enemy the most to allow you to get your people into position to fire on that assault? So there you go. I thought this was pretty interesting on this layered defense, how they set this up. The manuals only gave me, you know, this is tripwire in this layer, in this level, it's command det in this level, it's pressure in this level. But luckily I knew what type of mines they're talking about because I've done videos on a lot of these mines already. If you're interested in finding out more information on them as to how big they were, what were they made out of, what did they look like, so that you get an idea of what was in each layer of the defense here. So there you go, Yugoslavian protective anti-personnel minefields. Now for all my engineer brothers and Patriot militia movements, always remember SAONs.